Robert Louis Stevenson. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Part 4. Incident of the Letter. It was late in the afternoon when Mr. Utterson came to Dr. Jekyll's door. Poole let him in at once. He took him through the kitchen and across a yard that had once been a garden to a building that was called the laboratory or the dissecting rooms. The doctor had bought the house from the family of a famous surgeon. His interests were more in chemistry than in anatomy, so he changed the use of the building at the end of the garden. This was the first time the lawyer had been in this part of his friend's house. He looked at the dark building without windows with curiosity. As he walked through the theater, he felt it was strange and unpleasant. It was once full of eager students, but now it was empty and silent. The tables were full of chemical equipment. The floor was covered with boxes and packing straw. The light came weakly through the foggy roof. At the far end, there were stairs that went up to a door covered with red cloth. Through this door, Mr. Utterson finally entered the doctor's cabinet. It was a large room with glass cupboards all around. There was also a large mirror and a work table. 3 dirty windows with iron bars looked into the yard. A fire was burning in the fireplace. A lamp was lit on the shelf above it because the fog was already thick, even inside the house. Close to the fire sat Dr. Jekyll. He looked very ill, almost like death. He did not stand up to greet his visitor, but gave him a cold hand and welcomed him in a changed voice. "And now," said Mr. Utterson, as soon as Poole had left them, "you have heard the news?" The doctor shook. "They were shouting it in the square," he said. "I heard them in my dining room." "One word," said the lawyer. "Carew was my client, but you are my client too, and I want to know what I am doing. You have not been foolish enough to hide this man." "Utterson, I swear to God," cried the doctor. "I swear to God I will never see him again. I promise you that I am finished with him in this world. It is all over. And he does not need my help. You do not know him as I do. He is safe. He is completely safe. Remember my words. No one will ever hear about him again." The lawyer listened with a dark face. He did not like his friend's nervous way. "You seem very sure about him," he said, "and for your sake, I hope you are right. If there is a trial, your name might be mentioned." "I am completely sure about him," replied Jekyll. "I have reasons that I cannot tell anyone. But there is one thing you can advise me about. I have received a letter, and I do not know if I should show it to the police. I would like to give it to you, Utterson. You will decide wisely, I am sure. I trust you very much." "You are afraid, I think, that it might help them find him?" asked the lawyer. "No," said the other. "I cannot say that I care what happens to Hyde. I am completely finished with him. I was thinking about my own reputation, which this terrible business has damaged." Utterson thought for a while. He was surprised by his friend's selfishness, but also a little relieved. "Well," he said at last, "let me see the letter." The letter was written in a strange, neat handwriting and signed Edward Hyde. It said, in a short way, that the writer's benefactor, Dr. Jekyll, whom he had badly repaid for many kindnesses, should not worry about his safety. He said he had a way to escape, and trusted it completely. The lawyer quite liked the letter. It made their relationship seem better than he had expected, and he blamed himself for his earlier suspicions. "Do you have the envelope?" he asked. "I burned it," replied Jekyll, "before I thought about it. But it had no postmark. The letter was delivered by hand." "Shall I keep this and think about it overnight?" asked Utterson. "I want you to decide everything for me," was the reply. "I have lost trust in myself." "Well," "I will think about it," said the lawyer. "And now one more question. It was Hyde who decided the terms in your will about that disappearance?" The doctor suddenly looked weak and unwell. He closed his mouth tightly and nodded. "I knew it," said Utterson. "He wanted to kill you. You were very lucky to escape." "I have had something much more important," replied the doctor seriously. "I have learned a lesson. Oh God, Utterson, what a lesson I have learned." And he covered his face with his hands for a moment. On his way out, the lawyer stopped and spoke briefly with Poole. "By the way," he said, "a letter came today. What did the messenger look like?" But Poole was sure that nothing had arrived except by post. "And only advertisements came," he added. This news made the visitor worried again. Clearly the letter had come through the laboratory door. It was even possible that it had been written in the cabinet. If that was true, it had to be judged differently and treated more carefully. As he walked, newsboys were shouting loudly along the streets. "Special edition! Terrible murder of an MP!" This was like a funeral speech for one friend and client. He could not stop worrying that the good name of another friend might also be pulled down into the scandal. At least, it was a difficult decision he had to make. Although he was usually confident, he now began to want advice. He could not get it directly, but he thought he might find a way to get it indirectly. Presently, he sat on one side of his own fireplace, with Mr. Guest, his head clerk, on the other side. Between them, at a careful distance from the fire, stood a bottle of a special old wine that had long been kept in the dark cellar of his house. The fog still hung over the city, where the lamps shone like red jewels. Through the heavy fog, the life of the city still moved along the main streets with a sound like a strong wind. But the room was bright with firelight. The wine in the bottle had aged for a long time. Its deep color had become softer and richer, like colors in stained glass. It held the warmth of autumn afternoons in Vineyard Hills, ready to be released and drive away the fog of London. Slowly, the lawyer began to relax. There was no man with whom he shared more secrets than Mr. Guest, and he was not always sure he kept as many secrets as he planned. Guest had often visited the doctor for business. He knew Poole. He must have heard about Mr. Hyde's presence in the house. He might make his own ideas. So maybe it was better if he saw a letter that explained the mystery. Also, Guest was very interested in handwriting, so he would find this natural and helpful. The clerk was also a man who gave good advice. He would not read such a strange document without saying something. From that comment, Mr. Utterson could decide what to do next. "This is a sad matter about Sir Danvers," he said. "Yes, sir, indeed. It has caused a lot of public feeling," replied Guest. "The man was clearly mad." "I would like to hear your opinion about that," said Utterson. "I have a document here in his handwriting. This is between us because I am not sure what to do with it. It is a bad business in any case, but here it is. It is something you will find interesting. The writing of a murderer." Guest's eyes became bright, and he sat down at once and studied it with great interest. "No, sir," he said, "not mad. But it is a strange handwriting." "And people say he was a very strange writer," added the lawyer. Just then the servant came in with a note. "Is that from Dr. Jekyll, sir?" asked the clerk. "I think I know the handwriting. Is it something private, Mr. Utterson?" "Only an invitation to dinner." "Why? Do you want to see it?" "One moment. Thank you, sir." The clerk put the two papers next to each other and carefully compared them. "Thank you, sir," he said at last, giving them back. "It is a very interesting example of handwriting." There was a pause, during which Mr. Utterson struggled with his thoughts. "Why did you compare them, Guest?" he asked suddenly. "Well, sir," replied the clerk, "there is a rather strange similarity. The two handwritings are the same in many ways, only slanted differently." "Quite strange," said Utterson. "Yes, as you say, quite strange," replied Guest. "I would not talk about this note, you know," said the master. "No, sir," said the clerk. "I understand." But as soon as Mr. Utterson was alone that night, he locked the note in his safe, where it stayed from that time on. "What?" he thought. "Henry Jekyll is copying the writing of a murderer?" And his blood ran cold. Incident of Dr. Lanyon. Time passed. A large reward was offered, because the death of Sir Danvers was seen as a crime against the public. But Mr. Hyde disappeared from the police as if he had never existed. Many things about his past were discovered, and all of them were bad. People told stories about his cruelty, which was both cold and violent. They spoke about his evil life, his strange friends, and the hatred that seemed to follow him. But no one knew where he was now, not even a whisper. From the moment he left the house in Soho on the morning of the murder, he simply vanished. As time went on, Mr. Utterson slowly became less afraid. He began to feel calmer again. In his opinion, the death of Sir Danvers was more than paid for by the disappearance of Mr. Hyde. Now that this evil influence was gone, a new life started for Dr. Jekyll. He left his isolation and met his friends again. He once more became a regular guest and host. He had always been known for helping others, but now he was also known for being religious. He was busy. He spent much time outside. He did good things. His face seemed happier and brighter, as if he felt good inside. For more than 2 months, the doctor was at peace. On the 8th of January, Utterson had dinner at the doctor's house with a small group. Lanyon was there too. The host looked from one to the other, just like in the old days when the three of them were very close friends. On the 12th, and again on the 14th, the door was closed to the lawyer. The doctor was confined to the house, Poole said, and saw no one. On the 15th, he tried again, but was refused again. For the last 2 months, he had seen his friend almost every day, so this sudden return to being alone made him feel unhappy. On the 5th night, he invited Guest to dine with him. On the 6th night, he went to visit Dr. Lanyon. There, at least, he was allowed to enter. But when he came in, he was shocked by how much the doctor had changed. It was clear from his face that he was close to death. The once healthy man had become pale. He had lost weight. He was clearly more bald and older. But it was not only these signs of physical decline that caught the lawyer's attention. There was something in his eyes and in his manner that showed a deep fear in his mind. It did not seem likely that the doctor was afraid of death, and yet that was what Utterson began to think. Yes, he thought, he is a doctor. He must know his own condition, and that his days are numbered. And this knowledge is too much for him. But when Utterson spoke about his poor appearance, Lanyon answered in a strong and firm way that he was a dying man. "I have had a shock," he said, "and I shall never recover. It is a matter of weeks. Well, life has been pleasant. I liked it. Yes, sir, I used to like it. I sometimes think that if we knew everything, we would be more ready to leave." "Jekyll is ill too," said Utterson. "Have you seen him?" But Lanyon's face suddenly changed, and he raised a shaking hand. "I do not want to see or hear anything more about Dr. Jekyll," he said in a loud and unsteady voice. "I am completely finished with that person. I ask you not to mention someone whom I consider dead." "Tut, tut," said Mr. Utterson. Then, after a long pause, he asked, "Can I do anything? We are 3 very old friends, Lanyon. We will not live long enough to make new ones." "Nothing can be done," said Lanyon. "Ask him." "He will not see me," said the lawyer. I am not surprised, was the answer. One day, Utterson, after I am dead, you may learn what is right and wrong in this matter. I cannot tell you now. In the meantime, if you can sit and talk with me about other things, please stay and do so. But if you cannot avoid this terrible subject, then in God's name go, because I cannot bear it. As soon as he got home, Utterson sat down and wrote to Jekyll. He complained that he was not allowed to visit the house, and he asked about the reason for this unhappy break with Lanyon. The next day he received a long reply. Some parts were written in a very sad way, and some parts were dark and hard to understand. The quarrel with Lanyon could not be fixed. I do not blame our old friend, Jekyll wrote, but I agree that we must never meet again. From now on, I plan to live a very private life. You must not be surprised, and you must not doubt my friendship, if my door is often closed even to you. You must let me go my own dark way. I have brought on myself a punishment and a danger that I cannot explain. If I am the worst of sinners, I am also the one who suffers the most. I did not think that this world had a place for such suffering and fear. There is only one thing you can do, Utterson, to make this fate easier, and that is to respect my silence. Utterson was shocked. Hyde's dark influence was gone. The doctor had returned to his old work and friendships. A week ago, everything looked bright, and it seemed that he would have a happy and respected old age. And now, in one moment, friendship, peace of mind, and his whole life were destroyed. Such a big and sudden change suggested madness. But because of Lanyon's behavior and words, there had to be a deeper reason. A week later, Dr. Lanyon became very ill and had to stay in bed. In less than 2 weeks, he was dead. The night after the funeral, which had made him very sad, Utterson locked the door of his office. He sat there by the light of a sad candle. He took out an envelope. It was addressed in the handwriting of his dead friend and sealed with his seal. Private, for the hands of G.J. Utterson alone, and in case of his predecease to be destroyed unread, was clearly written on it. The lawyer was afraid to look at what was inside. I have buried one friend today, he thought. What if this takes another from me? Then he told himself that this fear was not loyal to his friend, and he broke the seal. Inside, there was another envelope. It was also sealed. On the cover, it said, "Not to be opened till the death or disappearance of Dr. Henry Jekyll." Utterson could not believe his eyes. Yes, it said disappearance. Once again, like in the strange will that he had earlier returned to its owner, there was the idea of disappearance and the name of Henry Jekyll together. But in the will, this idea had come from the evil suggestion of Hyde. It had been written there for a clear and terrible reason. Now it was written by Lanyon. What could it mean? The lawyer felt a strong curiosity. He wanted to ignore the warning and learn the truth at once. But his professional honor and his loyalty to his dead friend were very strong. So he put the packet in the deepest part of his private safe. It is one thing to control curiosity, and another to defeat it completely. It is possible that from that day on, Utterson did not want to see his living friend as much as before. He still thought of him kindly, but his thoughts were uneasy and full of fear. He did go to visit him, but he may have felt relieved when he was not allowed to enter. Perhaps, in his heart, he preferred to speak with Poole at the door, outside in the open air of the city, rather than go into that house, which felt like a prison, and sit with its mysterious master. Poole did not have good news. The doctor now stayed more than ever in the room above the laboratory. Sometimes he even slept there. He was unhappy. He had become very quiet. He did not read. It seemed that something was troubling his mind. Utterson became so used to hearing the same reports that he slowly visited less and less often.